All right, welcome everybody. I want to do a quick sound check. Check 1 2 3. Check 1 2 3. Is the sound okay? Check 1 2 3. How's the sound? Sound check 1 2 3. Sounds good. Dennis, can you say hello to make sure you're coming through loud and clear?
Hello.
All right.
I hope everything's cool over there in America. What time is it over there?
It is 8 p.m. 8:02 p.m. to be precise.
All right.
All right, sounds great. Thank you. All right, thanks everybody. This is the Harsh Reality. My name is Erica. I'm going to be your host tonight. I have the legendary Dennis Wise on the show. Yay! I've been trying to contact you for a good 6 months. I've been following you around
Really?
on your videos, posting comments, and so finally we met up. So I'm thrilled to have you on. Thank you so much. You said it was 2 o'clock in the morning there, and I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate you staying up for me.
Not a problem. I mean, I'm not surprised he took so long to catch me. I keep ducking and diving.
Yes, you're hard to get a hold of, but I did it. Yay!
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just wanted to first thank you for all the hard work that you've done in bringing the truth to light. I know that for this community that you're a part of, that oftentimes people make great sacrifices and even losing family members. I don't know. Have you experienced something like that?
Well, fortunately, when I decided to actually tell the story, I knew what the consequences would be if I revealed too much. And so I've always been able to do the work as best as my ability, but try and keep as anonymous as possible.
Right.
I think it was 2013, I think the ADL made an announcement where they said they wouldn't challenge the documentary anymore. They would just put it to one side and hope it disappeared. But recently it's been mentioned in the New Zealand shooting. Why? I've no idea, because there's no particular violence against Muslims
Right.
in that documentary at all. And it's been mentioned in the UN. I think they classed it as hate speech, and it was probably the most watched video in 2015 by the white nationalists in America.
Wow. How many views
Yeah.
does the Greatest Story Never Told have total now? Do you know?
Do you know, I really haven't got a clue, but I do estimate it's up there in the millions.
In the millions? Yeah. It's a wonderful documentary and very well done, very factual, and it was probably the first movie that really red-pilled me. And I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you put into all of your work, not just the Greatest Story Never Told, but your most recent, I believe, is the Communism by the Back Door. Is that right?
No, it's the Secret Masonic Victory World War II is the most recent one.
That's right. I have to get to that. I made it through the communism and through the back door, and I have to have that next. There's so much to learn, and
it's going to blow you away.
Yeah, I mean, this stuff will keep me busy for years, literally.
Well, it's probably the final law, I think, because I think there's going to be some laws coming out to stop people making documentaries like this. Obviously, it has affected things. I personally believe that it was the spell which was cast over the world in 1945. The documentary did break it. I didn't know if it ever would or if I could ever do it, because I'd never done anything on that scale before. I used to just make promo videos, still do at times, for companies, but nothing to the extent of a 6.5 hour epic.
Right. Now, can you tell me how you found out about this? When did you first learn that the history that you were being taught was not the truth?
Okay, well, my father actually fought for the Axis down in the Balkans and on the Eastern Front. and he managed to survive the war. And some others came over here as well. Surprising place to come, really, because obviously been at war with Britain, but settled over here. And when I was about 10 years old, came home from school, and I was pretty familiar about what had gone on. He told me many a fireside chat at night, sometimes with the log burning. And I was told at school that Adolf Hitler murdered 6 million Jews. When I came home and questioned it, he kind of went a little bit further with detail and everything. And it was quite hurt, actually, when I mentioned it. So, consequently, as I grew up, I knew all about him. I couldn't really say anything because, just like, like everywhere else, you mentioned that Adolf Hitler's name, everyone was so brainwashed that he just wouldn't get anywhere anyway. It wasn't until the internet that I even thought of telling the story. But up to then, it served me well because I knew the propaganda about Iraq, I knew the propaganda about various places, and my lads never wanted to join them because they also knew.
Mm-hmm. And how did that make you feel?
Well, I suppose at that age, I knew, but I think I once got told off in class at school when it was on about the Holocaust, and I wasn't listening, and I can remember getting scolded for that. But it didn't really bother me because it was at the back of my mind.
Right.
Pointless saying it to anybody because they wouldn't have just, they just refuted it.
Right. Right. So when you got older, and I know that when the internet came along, that's when you decided to dive in and really research this, right?
Yeah, well, the thing was, I lost family at what they call the Blueberg Massacre. They call it Blueberg repatriations on Wikipedia, but it was actually a massacre. And I lost family there. And when the time came when I had to make a decision whether I was going to do it or not, that was what swung it, because if there is an afterlife and we ever do meet other people, I couldn't have looked them in the eye if I hadn't at least tried to amend some of the wrong.
So I didn't catch the part where what event where it was it that you lost family in?
Okay. Yeah, well, what it was there in the Balkans when everything collapsed at the end of the war.
Okay.
Instead of surrendering to the communists, everybody fled to try and get to Austria.
Right.
And surrendered to the Americans or the British. The place was Blueberg. But what nobody knew was previous to that, the Cossacks had also surrendered there a while back, and they got sent straight back. But they had a baseball bat fight for 3 nights to get the Cossacks back on the trains.
Oh,
so this time,
yeah. That was the forced repatriation, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Okay.
This time they didn't bother with baseball bats. They just lied. They just said the train's going to Italy and new people can board the trains and go to safety. I wasn't saying you people. Well, it was about 250,000 soldiers, and they all had the family with them because they're not going to leave the family behind for the communists to kill.
Right.
So the grandfathers, the babies, the grandchildren, the wives, the sisters, the mothers, everybody was there. They called them camp followers. And I managed to find some footage actually when a British general was admitting all this, and he said that he phoned the headquarters. I think it was Churchill, and he said, "What do we do with the camp followers?" And somebody on the line said, "Send them back as well." So consequently, of a nation of 4 million, if you add everything up, there's at least 1 million killed. So it's almost a quarter of the nation.
Wow. That's heartbreaking. It really is. How many lives were lost, and not only that.
This is after the war.
Yeah.
I mean, same in Germany. 15 million died after the war.
Yeah, after the war. Yeah, and it's just so sickening that not only do we have this massive loss of life, and it's straight up just murder. It's not even war related, but they were murdered. Okay, in cold blood. But to add insult to injury, we do not have that acknowledgement that these people deserve,
No.
And
that's true. Even at Dresden, You go to Wikipedia, which is obviously Zionist controlled, so they've admitted it themselves, and everything's in play, which is sad, but
Yeah,
there we go.
it's very sad. It's very sad, and I know personally, and I'm sure everybody who's gone through this and is learning the true story and the horrors and the injustices that have been going on. You go through the stages of grief, and and that's partly why I do what I do, because
Yeah.
I want to bring the truth out to people, and that's all that matters to me. So if I lose people, then I lose people. But I've gained a lot of friends, true friends, in the process, and I'm very grateful for that. So.
Well, the thing is that you have to realise that you can lock it down, you can bury it, you can toss it into the sea, wherever you want to put the truth. It's going to come out one day,
Right.
and it came out that day when I did the documentary. I mean, they were totally unaware of it because I knew if I went too close to the Holocaust and things like that, then I'd get banned straight away. And I managed to get 17 out of 26 parts on YouTube before the ban me. It was too late then, people had already cottoned on. It was up on the websites, and
Right.
the ball was starting to roll.
Right. And thank God for that. Thank God for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to just ask a couple questions. And we may end up kind of going back and forth with the timeline.
No problem.
But I first kind of wanted to address this recent video that's come out, and I believe I forwarded it to you via email. And it's the one by C.J. Books or something like that, where he's trying to claim that Hitler was really a communist and he was really working undercover for the Rothschilds and all this nonsense. So I also, before you answer, I'll talk to another friend of mine. He was the guy that was with me on the stream that you had watched the other day. Me and the two, the pacifist, told me that he believes that early on he was part of because the Communist Party in Germany broke up a few times, or splintered off, okay? And, over time they splintered up into like 2 or 3 separate groups. So in the very beginning, I believe Hitler was part of it. However, as time went on and he learned who was in power and in control, he left that and became and he was a reactionary, not a revolutionary. So that I just kind of wanted to add that, and then I wanted to ask your opinion as far as what other facts and things that you know about, and what propaganda was in that video that's going around right now, trying to fool people. And if you have anything to add.
Sure. Well, I mean, it's not the first time. I mean, you can run off several things, like you said, Rothschild, Jew, Reagan, British spy, drug addict, on and on. So to me, this is, just another one of trying to, let's say, take away everything they can from him. Because when I was at school, they said the medals that he got in World War One
Right.
were worthless.
Right.
They said he wasn't really a hero. It was on the easiest job going, and obviously you'll learn later that it was one of them jobs with the highest mortality. But anyway, the thing is, people like to take away as much as they can from him, because they really can't. After 70 years, he's still there.
Right.
And he's still a poignant figure. I mean, just a little sidetrack here. I was supposed to be doing a talk once with Richard Spencer, who was the alternate right leader. But he sent a message to me saying, fine, we can have a debate, but I will not talk about Adolf Hitler. Well, that to me is a red flag straight away, because if you're not going to talk about the one man who brought all this to the front so everybody knew about it, then there's something wrong. So
Right.
I've always gone by that now. I mean, if they won't talk about Adolf Hitler, or, they won't say anything positive, it's a shield.
Right.
Simple as that.
And this
Well,
is Richard
yeah.
Spencer.
Richard Spencer, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So I just sent a message back, and well, you carry on your own because I'm over there. So anyway,
Well, good for you. Wow.
yeah, I mean, it's just pointless. I mean, he's central to all this. He revealed what the bankers did. He revealed what the Jews did. They revealed what the communists did. So going back to the question,
Right.
yeah, in the early days, I mean, he left the army. He was injured in the army, and he knew about the communists. I mean, and he also, in Austria, previous to that, knew about the Jews. So, I think he was an intelligent guy, and he knew which was which.
Right.
I mean, he did work, apparently, for somebody to go spying on certain parts to see what was going on for the army. And that's how we found the National Socialists. But, as far as being a communist, I mean, that picture he showed when he walked in that crowd, I mean, well, I could put a moustache on that. I'm sure they were popular in them days. And there was no features or anything to see.
Right.
So, he made him be spying. I mean, that's, say go off that one piece of film is ridiculous. But
Right.
anyway,
Right.
you know what I'm saying. So, I mean, at the earliest possible time, they were fighting the communists anyway, because immediately after the war, they took over.
Yeah.
Took over the government for
Right.
4 days.
Yeah.
So, and there's an old gentleman right at the end of the Greatest Story Never Told, who talks about Hitler, and when he looked into his eyes, I don't know if you can remember that guy, and he said his eyes seemed to go right through.
Yeah.
And he just said he was an honest man.
Right.
So, and he was one of them what were killing the communists, so he would have known Hitler. I mean, I've got him again in this latest video, DVD, where he says, like, he had no qualms about taking a communist round the back and shooting them, because all they wanted to do was cause disruption.
Yeah.
Which
Absolutely.
This is what they did.
And that's
So,
yeah.
they were brutal with him, yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm quite sure Hitler was involved.
that's in fact what they did exactly to Berlin. And Berlin was turned upside down
Street fighting.
into a town of complete debauchery and no morals. It was just a devastated city basically, and it was communist run. And they were having problems with the communists all throughout pre-World War II and during World War II with the communists with their guerrilla warfare and.
Yeah. Well, there's a book actually which people can probably find on archive.org, which was banned once over, and it's called Communism in Germany. It goes through in great detail, gives a lot of charts, and lists a lot of deaths. I mean, there was a hell of a war going on even after the communists were kicked out, because they used to come in and cause trouble, fights and whatever. That's why Hitler had the SS going, and then they escape out of the country and then come back again, blow another building up. So when people say that Hitler did when the Vice Chancellor were blown up, it wasn't him. I mean, there was 6 million communists in the country.
Right.
I mean, if anybody were annoyed, it was the communists, because they got in power.
Right, exactly. And the fact that after World War II, the Bolshevism basically, they won the war, and now they currently control the world. So Hitler being a communist makes no sense at all. It makes no sense.
Well, if I could just add to that, because what I've found out now in the third documentary, when you're talking about the Bolsheviks, I'm going to start on this one. Okay, you've got France and if you go back to the Russian Revolution in 1917, the US bankers funded that successful revolution. Tried previously, hadn't worked, but since 1917, Lenin was in and Trotsky was in.
Right.
Now, if anybody thinks that a bolt of lightning hit shift on the head, and he thought, well, I'll just give Russia to these two revolutionaries, it ain't never going to happen.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is, Lenin was a puppet, later Stalin was a puppet.
Right.
The actual people who ran the Soviet Union was the successful funders of that revolution, the bankers.
Right.
And he even plundered it for 600 million rupees, took it back to New York. But right, so if you've got that in mind now, okay, so then Roosevelt, who was also working for bankers, brings Stalin over to America, and hey, let's meet Uncle Joe. This is a great guy. We can get Soviet Union in the League of Nations and all this, which they did. And he sold him as, like I said, Uncle Joe. So you bear that in mind. So when Churchill, England and France declare war on Germany because they invaded Poland,
Right.
He defeats France in 6 weeks, and Britain is heading back in rowing boats back, across the Channel.
Right.
So Churchill then has a, well, we brought him in World War One. I'll go and see my mate Roosevelt again. So he goes over to America, right, and says about Roosevelt, can you get another army up because Hitler's causing chaos in Europe, and I'm sure your bankers are losing a lot of usury. So Roosevelt would have said to Churchill, well, I can't at the moment because nobody in the country wants to go to war, and I've just won an election saying I won't go to war, so I'm going to have to work on that one.
Right.
But meanwhile, I'll give the bankers a buzz, and lo and behold, they could have a word with Stalin. Remember, Stalin's in the pocket. So suddenly, when everything's all settled down and Europe's now back under nationalism and Christianity, because he kind of, in 1941, on mainland Europe, he more or less turned the clock back before World War One.
Right.
He conquered Norway, conquered Denmark, conquered Belgium, conquered France, and he only lost about 100,000 men. So, 1941, suddenly, there's rumours of 30 million men on the border. I don't think he knew there were that many, but he certainly knew. This has been hidden from history.
Right.
But, everybody in the East knows it.
Right.
And so suddenly Stalin's going to invade.
Right.
And Stalin would have invaded. It would have been under the bankers' orders, and they would have clinged right through to Spain. Because if you remember, they just lost the Spanish Revolution. Mussolini and Hitler had helped Franco win that.
Right.
So the Bolsheviks got beat there. So they would have gone straight through to Spain, and no doubt France and everywhere else raped and plundered. But Hitler preempted him and took 6 nations with him into that Soviet Union and to try and take Stalin down at the same time. But he never gets no mention whatsoever.
Right.
And so consequently he gets so far, but by then the US and Britain are keeping Russia in the war.
Right.
And until US can get their act together and invade, and eventually it does with a false flag.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. The rumor about Hitler being an occultist, I found some information about why or where he got the idea of the swastika from. And it was when he was young, he had he attended a funeral to or saw on an abbot's tombstone, they had the swastika on there, and it was a memorial for the abbot.
Yeah. Well, in the documentary, it actually shows it in the church of the abbey.
Right.
Because people think it's just pagan, but it's not just pagan. The swastika is kind of a lucky charm for a lot of people, and Christians was one of them. I mean, I saw a photo on YouTube. Somebody was arguing with me. The Bishop of Coventry was in a tomb, that type of thing, but there was kind of a statue on top of the tomb, and all around his fish hat were swastikas. And this is the Bishop of Coventry. So it stretches over many cultures and many religions.
Right.
So when people say it's pagan, there's your excuse.
Right.
No. The reason he wanted the swastika really was because they'd no flag. They had the sickle and hammer, but the National Socialists didn't have any flag which could bring fear to the Bolsheviks. That's what he wanted. He wanted to bring fear. And so he kind of designed that red, white and black flag, which consequently became one of the most feared ever.
Right. Now, why do you do you know why they started the I heard Himmler was really the occultist in his part, in the party and all that.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, we know, or those of us who do know, that Hitler actually got rid of all the Masonic temples and stuff. He didn't like all that, and So, why do you think this rumor of occultism persists? Was Himmler an occultist, or I mean, what's the story with that?
Well, it's funny you say that because I've just completed part 19 of the new documentary, and that's all about that. So basically, what it is, I started off with Himmler because Himmler was the poster boy for all these pagans. But he actually made a couple of statements. He was from a Roman Catholic family, and he actually said that his words, not mine. You know, fools who believe that in these gods of the past and worshipping trees and things are what they are, fools. He said that the ancient ones believed in God and was no different to the religion what we do today. I can't word it as well as he did, but
Right.
you get the point. He was saying that it's all baloney.
Right.
He also brought a statement out again with the SS, and he said that anybody who criticizes Christ will be not water, because even to call him a Jew is an insult. And I looked into that as well, to look back on that and why they didn't think Jesus was a Jew. And I don't believe he was myself.
Right.
And it's a shock to people when you tell them that.
Right.
Once you realise, the Jews have had control of printing and, all the media and everything, then they control a lot of things and they've altered things. And I go on to prove that as well. So Hitler was, although he left the Catholic Church, he did leave in 1936, and a couple of others left as well, because they had a fallen out with the Catholic Church where it was more not about the faith, it was more anti-clerical. They weren't happy the way some things were going on, and so Hitler stepped away. But that statement about Jesus Christ came 2 years after he left the Vatican, so he was still defending Christ 2 years later.
Right.
So that can only tell me one thing,
Right. Okay. And wasn't he and the Pope at that time, though? Was the Pope at that time a good man? I forgot his name.
Yeah, Pius. I think it's Pius XII, is it?
Was he a good guy, or was he kind
yes,
of?
Yes,
Okay.
he was. He was, in actual fact, the last Pope.
Okay.
In my
Yeah.
eyes.
Right.
But what he did was, as soon as Hitler got, because he helped him get into power.
Yeah.
What happened was the Catholic Church told their own centre party to close down and support Hitler. So they've actually closed the actual party down because the Pope felt they were too liberal. After all this, the years with the Weimar, had been infiltrated, and this isn't what they wanted, because obviously they'd lost World War One, and the Catholic Church now was probably the weakest ever.
Right.
I think there were 3 Christian nations lost in World War empires. There were Russia, the Austro-Hungary,
Right.
and Germany. They all lost. So actually, Versailles was a Masonic celebration
Right.
led by Rothschilds. So 3 weeks after Hitler gets into power, Hitler signs the Reich Concordat. What that means is that the Vatican now will step back out of the political arena. They will still look after the education of the children through the Catholic education in Germany, but then they hand over all power, political power, to Adolf Hitler. In other words, you are the man chosen now to defend us from the expected attack of Bolshevism, because they had expected it before World War One.
Right.
So Hitler's now taking up that mantle. He also signed a concordat with Belgium, which is Leon de Gaulle.
Okay.
He's also signed one with Italy. So it's not just Germany. So they're making a kind of a few countries all together, to be prepared. In fact, what it really is Hitler's trying to recreate the Holy Roman Empire, which ended in 1806, the second one. So when you call it the Third Reich, that's the Third Empire.
Oh, okay.
And that's the Third
Okay.
Holy Roman Empire. So,
I see.
if people want to call it pagan, they well, but, it's a Christian, these are all Christian nations, all part of it.
Right. It was like the last fight for that.
Well, yeah, I mean, if I can just go into a bit more detail, Roosevelt, when he made that speech, and he brought out the dollar, with the triangle and the pyramid on the back of the dollar, what that meant to people in the know, believe it or not, was that pyramid was the death of death of the Catholic Church. He thought after World War One he had actually been slaughtered. And the other bits on that as well I explain. But that was the main thing. But in 1933, when he made that speech, that's when Hitler came to power and things started to move. So Hitler would have known what was going on because he obviously, Masons, he started going to war with them.
Right.
And that was hidden for a long time. I had many arguments on YouTube saying Hitler was a Freemason. And it's just didn't know what it is. So I had to actually go onto a German website. It was an occult website who listed every lodge and sister lodge that he closed. And it was like,
That he
wow.
called what?
I went onto this German website. I got there, I never know. It was like an occult website, and they listed every single lodge that Hitler closed. It was like, wow. It was one of them moments. Yeah.
Wow.
And obviously putting communism by the back door.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow. Amazing. I was going to say, when you had mentioned he was elected, and then, but before we get into that, I did want to just mention, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hitler's career in the war, and
Sure.
you know, that he was in fact a very brave man and a war hero.
Sure.
And so I know that he spoke out about the evils of tobacco and alcohol.
Yeah.
And he became a runner, which was like the most dangerous job that you could volunteer for or be assigned to, and he volunteered for it. And do you know what the all of the medals that he had? Do you remember all?
Yeah, I think it was 6 in all. One was an Iron Cross, which wasn't the full Iron Cross, but then he went on to win that full Iron Cross. So kind of 2 Iron Crosses, if you like. And the others were just medals for bravery. And I think in one of the battles, there's 6,000 in his company and 3,000 lost their lives, and he actually got a medal for that one as well. But I think he captured 5 French soldiers single-handedly to get them the big one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 6-0. And then
First class.
what took him out permanently was that he was gassed and almost blinded from the gas.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that contributed? Because I heard that some people, I don't know if maybe it was your video or somewhere, that it may have contributed to his developing Parkinson's disease at such a young age.
Well, I'm not sure whether he had Parkinson's disease at a young age, but he certainly had some kind of shakes, you know, towards the end. But yeah, I think there's bound to be some effect there. I mean, a lot of people were shell shocked as well, weren't they?
Right.
Seeing footage of them being, you know, they're shaking worse than ever, you know, at a young age.
Right. Yeah. So then, when he was elected, then there was the fire at the Reichstag fire, and there was all a bunch of fighting from the communists and whatnot, and then they formed the coalition government, which then gave him complete power, which now that's why they call him a dictator, or a...
Yeah, well, that's...
Okay.
Yeah, again, the church was involved in that as well, because they knew that once he became a dictator, he was Catholic, and you know, obviously he would do stand by, you know, fighting the communists. So yeah, that was all part of it. Today, you know, they try and cover up what the Catholic Church did, but in actual fact, I mean, there's no hiding that they were the first to deal with the Third Reich, and they were the last to deal with the Third Reich.
Right.
When I'm saying the last, when they didn't have to, because that war was over, and they managed to get a few 100,000 soldiers out of Europe from the communist purge. If the Catholic Church hadn't stepped in, then a lot of people would have had a lot of parents not living, you know, after the war. So we've been grateful for that because they didn't have to.
Right. Yeah, and you know, because when I looked over his policies, and you know, now fascism and, you know, dictatorship and all this stuff, you know, I want, and I know I had mentioned to you, I wanted to talk about his policies and his political outlook or perspective, and when I read his policies, like for example, he built infrastructure, provided housing for the workers. He gave priority to health and fitness, free health care. It was generous financial support for pregnant women. It was the world's first anti-smoking campaign in Germany with him, and he supported government policy for environmental and wildlife protection, paid holidays, and it was the first in Europe to do a 40-hour work week and extra pay for overtime, and factories were required to provide restrooms, cafeteria. He abolished usury.
Conditions were the best in the world then.
Yeah, and anti-cruelty laws for for animals.
Animals, yeah.
And
Sounds a real bad guy, doesn't he?
right. I mean, and I'm like, well, dictators usually don't do stuff like that. So I wanted.
Well, it depends, because the thing is, dictators have got a bad, a bad deal, because people look at democracy as democracy has only going, 100 years, and what that actually is as admitted by Clinton's mentor, Quigley, we're called Walter Burke, and he explained democracy. He said that they came up with a way, both in America and in England, where you have two sets of parties who pretended to be against each other, but every time the public voted for the other, the main policies never changed. Just the little policies mattered on, just to fool everybody. So in a sense, it is a dictatorship from behind the curtain, because the EU, for instance, we find out now in Britain that the Tory party and the Labour Party were always trying to get into EU,
right?
And that's just a prime example. So democracy is if you like, a sham.
Right.
The same people in power all the time.
Right. It's corporatism, but corporatism / oligarchy / I mean, yeah. There's lots of different names for the same thing.
They usually win.
Yeah.
They have no mechanism there. And the thing with dictators is, if you've got a good dictator, a bad one like Stalin is, pretty awful.
Right.
Because he doesn't care about his people. But if you have Hitler or Gaddafi, for instance,
right,
who everything back into the country, and the country and the people are well off, then there's nothing wrong.
Right.
They hate that kind of dictator.
Right.
These Clintons. And,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And he actually, because I think during the Bolshevik Revolution, they kicked out a bunch of Jews, and it was Germany that accepted millions of Jews that were being.
That was before, no. Yeah, I mean that was before the.
Before Bolshevik. Okay, I knew it was right around that time, but.
No. Tried to take about 5 years. I think about 1905.
Okay.
I think they tried the first revolution. It failed. So then obviously a lot of Jews had a lot of problems, and they left Russia. And Germany opened up, their arms to them. They said, "Yeah, come on in, not a problem."
Right.
They didn't know what they were letting in.
Right.
So.
Do you know what year the first work camp was created? I know it was funded by I.G. Farben, right?
Well, I'm not sure of that, to be honest, because I found out some more irrefutable evidence about the funding as well. I'll come to that in a second. They brought the camps in because obviously the communists were a pain, some of them at least, and a lot of Jews were communists.
Right.
So when you threw the Jews in the camps, well, they would have thrown Jews in the camps, but they threw them because they were communists.
Right.
So,
and they were causing a lot of problems.
Actually,
right.
That's right. They put them in the camps. Then Germany was accusing them, mistreating them, and torturing them, which wasn't the case. He actually put an advert in one of the papers in Britain saying, "Come on over and check it out." And some people from America did go over and check it out, and there was no problem. It was, all right, it was strict. You had to exercise. You had to wear. There was no torture.
Right.
But this is the great myth starts now.
Right. And there were definitely no gas chambers either. And was it in fact the only people? How that story came about? Wasn't it that the Soviets had
obvious.
had stated, "Oh,
Yeah.
they discovered this," and in fact, it wasn't. And in fact, their work camps or slave labor camps were 1,000 times worse
Yes.
than anybody's. And America had camps as well, and people don't know that. So
Yes,
yeah,
Japanese.
right, yeah, and a lot of people don't know that story about the gas chambers came from the Soviet Union. And
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these people have lied about the Katyn massacres, and Churchill and Roosevelt knew all about this because they were working for the bankers anyway. So,
right,
the Katyn, there were huge massacres in the Ukraine, which again the Germans called in neutral countries to take a look for silence from the Allies.
right. I think in total they murdered over 66 million people. I mean, that's just astounding, in the most brutal ways too, imaginable.
Yeah.
Just terrible. We have a question real quick for you.
Well,
Johnny Earl asks, please ask Mr. Wise, what is his opinion on Hitler dying in Berlin or escaping?
Well, a refugee escaped, but like everybody else, we don't really know how he died. There's two ways that it was announced he died. One was the actual official announcement by the Germans themselves, said that he died while fighting in battle, and the other one was obviously the suicide. And when it comes to making the Great Story Never Told, I went along with the suicide because that's the one that everybody was told. Whether that's true or not, I mean, that still hasn't been proven.
Right, and it was
So
wasn't it the Soviets that found supposedly his body?
Yeah.
And all that? Okay, yeah. So you just can't. Do you know if have they opened up those documents at all, or?
It said something that they had done at one point. It said that they threw the ashes into the Rhine or something, one of the rivers out there. But then later on they said that the skull, which they always thought it was a woman. So it's just more confusing.
Okay.
But as far as escaping, I don't accept that at all.
Okay.
No proof whatsoever. And I don't trust the FBI and CIA as much as the Bolsheviks because they're the same.
Right. What's your personal opinion?
Personal opinion, if I had to decide, I would probably go for the suicide because he told Paulus, and Paulus was on the verge of surrendering to the Stalingrad. He told Paulus to take it like just an honourable way out, just like the Japanese fallen sword.
Right.
The Germans thought that committing suicide was better than surrendering,
Right.
and it's the same thing with Hitler. So it doesn't surprise me if he did that. Then it wouldn't surprise me.
Right. Okay. Some tongue speaker wants to know, Mr. Wise, if you know Joe Imbriano on YouTube, the Fullerton Informer, was he one of the narrators for The Greatest Story Never Told? Does that ring a bell, Joe Imbriano?
No, I get asked a lot of things about it, but did he want the names of the narrators, did he say?
Well, did Joe Imbriano narrate any part of The Greatest Story Never Told?
Not as far as I know, no. I mean,
Okay.
I just used Allied footage, believe it or not. It was when people are talking, 99% of people talking,
Right.
these are Allied documentaries.
Okay. Right.
So when I get criticised for it, I mean,
Why would
well, as
they?
I admit it.
There's no reason to criticize. I mean, it's just it's it's truth, but yeah.
No,
so
I'm
no,
sure they'd find a way.
yeah, of course, because they don't want the truth coming out, so they're going to try to attack you on every level possible. Now, there was let me see, the killing of the ethnic Germans in Poland is what kicked off the World War II,
Right.
because Great Britain guaranteed the Polish leader that, well, we'll back you, if there was, if they do invade. And Hitler had made a pact with Stalin that nobody knew about, that they would split Poland up.
They do.
Huh? Oh, they did. Okay, I thought it was under the
Well,
cover,
eventually they did, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
right,
it was a smart move
right,
because what happened there was and I covered this in the last episode of the Secret Masonic Victory. So I went into great detail to prove who started World War II, and it proved it, to be honest, because they've got boots, they've got coloured boots. The British invented these coloured boots about 1700, and the white boot was the German one, and the blue boot was the British one. I think a yellow one or a green one was the French. Okay. So what they do is they mark down the minutes of a build up to a war, and the white book was 400 pages, the German one, but the British one was only 100 pages, because the British didn't start writing theirs till long after the refugees were coming to the borders, saying that they were getting problems with the Poles and the pogroms. And so all through all this, Hitler's waiting 6 months. He's done some magnanimous offers to solve the situation, but he can only wait. No, he can't wait longer now.
Right.
The Germans are dying.
Yeah, they were brutally massacring them too. Yeah.
Oh, you not believe that? That was brutal.
Yeah.
And so he invaded, and the big excuse has always been, the killings only started when the Germans invaded. Well, no, because in the White Book, it shows evidence of medical experts taking these bodies, examining them, and the way that they rotted, and there was. I mean, the war only lasted 20 days. These bodies have been rotting for months.
Right.
There's your proof. There's still a few thousand missing, presumed dead.
Right. Good point. Excellent point. I did want to ask you, speaking of autopsies, do you know? I haven't had time to really research into this part, but I heard that there were autopsies done on the camp inmates of the supposed gas chambers, and it was found negative for any gassing or whatnot. Have you heard about that?
Well, yeah. Well, when the Soviets first came out and mentioned gassing, the Americans then took it up in the West, and said, they were gassing at Dachau and these other places.
Right.
But then during the 70s, they actually had an investigation, which I can't believe, and they actually cleared every single camp in the West, which only left the camps in the East. Yeah, there was no gassings whatsoever in the West, even though it had been claimed. When they all went over to Hollywood producers and filming all these bodies, which weren't gas, they were obviously starving because they'd been bombing all the railways and transport. But anyway, so it's only in the East there where they say that the Holocaust existed, and of course they won't allow any investigations. In fact, they did allow one. After Fred Lucher went over there to Auschwitz on behalf of Ernst Sundel on the trial in Canada, he went over there, and the Poles did an exact same investigation, came up with the exact same result.
That it was negative for gas. I mean, far as murdering, as a tool for murder.
Yeah, the only proof of any gas was where they were delousing the clothes because it soaked into the wall and this causes a blue stain. But where they said that the gassing took place, not only were they impossible according to Fred Lucher, but no blue stains.
Right, and Fred Lucher is an expert in execution. In executions. Yep. So.
Well, the Jews will argue that, but they can't argue the fact that America was the only country in the world executed by gas, and Fred Lucher was the guy they called on to sort out, what's right and what's wrong with the gas chambers. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't only America's foremost; he was the world's foremost expert. But he kind of they do what they do.
You are absolutely correct. Thank you for mentioning that. He is the world's leading expert, and that's a big point. So everybody who's listening to that,
When he came back to the trial with all the results, he did say to Ernst Sundel before he went, "If I find out any evidence that there was gases, I will have to say this when I get back."
Right.
Which Ernst Sundel was fine with. He come back and he showed his findings. The judge didn't allow it to be seen, or heard at court.
No, that's terrible. That's just the injustices. But so is everybody that is listening to this right now. He was the world's leading expert. So, and that's a big point to make sure that you mention to people. If you get into the unfortunate, and you cross somebody's path who insists that this is true.
Can I just say about the Poland affair, when people are interested in the true story of that, what I found out in the end was, and there's plenty of evidence of this, even after the war was admitted by many Poles, that the Germans had gone ahead, the SS had gone ahead into Warsaw and captured secret papers. They displayed these papers in public to prove it was Roosevelt who was telling France and England to back Poland, because Roosevelt said to Beneš, the Czech leader, I'm going to bring America into Warsaw as I can. Don't worry, we'll put you back in again, because he'd been kicked out at one stage. So the proof of the pudding was that the papers were found to be not just the correct papers, they weren't copies, they were the original papers, as all known by numerous Polish experts after the politicians after the war. Right. So Roosevelt all the time was pushing for a war.
Right. Yeah. Roosevelt was basically he was a communist. He was a crypto communist.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Well, you know. Yeah. He was probably one of the worst people to ever exist, in my opinion.
Agreed.
You know.
Yeah.
There was a big Jewish domination of Weimar Germany. They had, from 1919 to 1932, they controlled 50% of the media, 70% of the judges.
Just like America.
Yeah. If we're not at 100% already now.
Yeah.
They introduced psychologically decadent art and theater, and caused catastrophic bank crashes. I mean, you guys, this is a pattern we've been seeing every 10 to 15 years ever since then. So you have to look at who's the common denominator here. You know,
they keep talking about 100 countries, and you can't always blame the landlord. You know, when there's going to be somebody.
Right.
I mean, what they do is they get accepted into a country, and even though they're only 2% maybe of the country, what they do is they club together and they buy the media, they buy up the press, you know, and they know instinctively what to do to bring a country down.
Yes.
Which E. Michael Jones talks about quite a lot, and he's a good source.
E. Michael Jones is going to be on the show. I don't have a date yet, though, but I've been talking with him email. Yeah, we're going to, and I have Kevin McDonald. He's going to come. And, and Fetch, Dennis the Fetch, and I'm not sure.
Oh,
yeah, he's coming. So yeah, I'm going to have quite a busy schedule coming up.
Quite a list. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, and I'm so grateful to have met all of you. I mean, everybody so far, and there's more to go, and I'm just really pumped up, and it's exciting. So let's see, that was the Christian. I can't pronounce it correctly. Kristallnacht. That.
Kristallnacht. Yeah.
Yeah. Now that was it had to do with the riots, and that was an assassination of the German politicians.
Yeah. And just one night as well.
Yeah.
But people have an idea that it went on forever, but it only went on for one night, and Goebbels and Hitler called it off because they were trying to negotiate this boycott, what had been facing.
Mm-hmm. Right, I remember. And then Hitler was like, "Oh, make sure this all stops." So he, wanted calm and peace within his own country. So.
Well, I can give you a little bit of information there, which is undisputed. A lot of people say, "How was Hitler funded?" The bankers funded him, or they didn't fund him. The bankers funded him. Trust me. And I'll explain how and why. It's not what it seems. Mm-hmm. What happened was, in 1933, Samuel Untermaier, because Germany had kicked out all the Jews from all powerful positions and replaced them with his own men, they had a meeting in Amsterdam, world Jewry, and they came to a decision that Hitler has to be kicked out and bring back all the communists and all the Jews back in power, or they will declare a holy war.
Yeah.
And Germany said, off you go, no chance. So Untermaier came back to America from that meeting, went on American radio, and actually declared a holy war, which we never refuted. We've always, nobody called it off. But this is 1933.
Right.
In that same speech, where he's trying to get people to not buy the goods and all, because he wanted to starve them like they did after World War One. Because after World War One, to sign the Versailles Treaty, they starved 900,000 Germans.
And didn't they?
That's already.
And didn't America have all of Germany's gold?
Yeah, they plundered everything, the colonies and everything.
Right.
And never got it back.
Right.
So, what he was trying to do was trying to do this again because he knew it had worked after World War One. But in the same speech, he starts to criticise, and you can see this online at archive.org. It was printed in the New York Times the day after his speech. He starts to have a go at the bankers. And he said, "For the life of me, I can't think why these bankers, is it fear or what? But you're sending money over to Germany, and any sign of any debts being paid, we're met with silence." Right. What actually happened was, when the crash came in the Weimar government, there were no debts paid off of this reparations for 2 years. The Jewish bankers still got their interest, if you like, kept sending the money. That's for 2 years then. So for another year, when Hitler got into power, they were still sending the money. It wasn't fear, it was greed. That's what it was. And Hitler's obviously getting all this money and thinking, well, I ain't paying no debts off because I don't believe in that treaty anyway, because it's still in Germany. So he then spent the money on whatever he wanted. So yeah, he funded him, but it was greed why they did it.
Right. And people forget that, even back then, as they do now, they run the world's economy. These bankers have been around long before Hitler came to power, and they were in charge. I mean, it's impossible to not do business to some degree with the bankers. That's just how it is. And people just don't get that. They think,
as well.
Right. They think, I mean, it's not enough that he nationalized all the banks and that he kicked all the communists out from powerful positions. He arrested one of the Rothschilds. What do you know which one? I can't remember the guy's name. Which Rothschild it was?
Well, there was, it was one in Austria.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Think it's first name, to be honest. But what happened there was when he went into Austria, because obviously the banks do what banks do, and they've ripped Austrian people off in his eyes, he then took him prisoner and he's put him up for ransom.
Right.
He didn't want to kill him because that's their war anyway.
Right.
So he put him up for ransom and actually offered something like 600,000. And he turned it down and laughed at it. Put him in prison for about 13 months until they actually paid it up. And it's the World Record fee still stands today. Something like, I don't know, 600 million, which in them days is a huge fee.
Yeah, right.
So
Louis the Rothschild.
All that money back as well. Yeah.
That's right. Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Another Rothschild was killed in France. Well, two, sorry, killed in France. One was the wife of Rothschild, who died in a camp. She died actually of typhus, but
oh, really?
It was later. It's later. It said that she died in the Holocaust, but we just said there were no gas chambers in Europe.
Right.
Western Europe, anyway. So, and the other one was, believe it or not, there was when the Jews went to Versailles, people say that the leaders of the countries, prime ministers and the presidents, took the Jews with them. No. The Jews went and took these puppets with them. The Jews from the show at Versailles, 120 Jews were there. And each country, like England and America, France, had a one Jewish representative who had overall say. And the one that was in charge of France was a Rothschild. Didn't use the Rothschild surname, but he was a Rothschild. Oh. And when France was invaded, he was shot up against the wall.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah. So, I mean, of all the actions that I've, read about that Hitler did, not one seems to me or tells me or proves to me that he was anything other than what he says he was, which was he loved his country, he was a nationalist, a socialist, and I like his idea of combining the two political positions together. He loved his people, and he was a good man. Now, and anything else, I mean, all these other rumors and things like that, I don't see how
Just to bring it
people.
down.
It's just stupid. If you really study it, and you study the proper, the truth, I don't see how
mean,
people can come up with anything else.
well, people in hindsight could say certain things. Take, for instance, when he let him off at Dunkirk, really some people say he should have just wiped them all out. But he's a man of race.
Right.
National Socialism is based on race. And he always looked at the Anglo-Saxons as cousins to the Germans.
Right.
And he didn't want to kill 300 Anglo-Saxons because he knew there weren't enough whites in the world as it is.
Right.
And Germany had already been, the remixing of German blood had already started after World War One.
Right.
And I found evidence of, in the Rhine Valley, the French sent in 40,000 colonial soldiers, blacks, who only 2 years before would be fighting the Germans in the war. And they went into the Rhine Valley, loaded, armed to the teeth, where the Germans had no weapons, and took any woman they wanted. And there was a huge balloo about it. Very little people know about it now. I found some information on archives.org again. So it's all in this latest documentary. It's proof, it's a living hell down there.
Right. Now, one thing I want to clear up also is that just because you support your race doesn't mean you're a racist. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Hitler respected very much the different ethnic backgrounds and different races of people. He didn't hate other races or other ethnicities. He respected them and wanted people to keep their culture.
Well, a lot of people think that, Slavs he had a thing about. But I can assure people that if he won the war, and obviously in the East where, Russia and all that, they didn't know motorways, they were just mud huts, we don't know proper housing. They would have benefited more than anybody because, the whole of Europe would have been rebuilt.
Right.
And, living houses like decent people.
Mm-hmm. Now, what's the issue with the slide? Because I keep hearing that coming up. So what's there? What did they say, that he hated the Slavs or something? And I mean, I don't know that whole story well enough. I was hoping you could explain it to me a little bit.
Well, according to Leon Degrelle, he changed after a few years in the war. He started to change his mind, but in the first place, he looked at Slavs more or less as Bolsheviks who had no intentions of they would be living in mud huts forever. They had no intentions of lifting themselves, and he just looked at them as a race which had no respect for itself, never mind any other races. So, and obviously, what the racism is of Hitler's is he wants the best for his race, and he wants other races to uplift themselves as well.
Right.
That's his racism.
Right. And there's nothing wrong with that,
No.
There's nothing wrong with that. There's a question, where did it go? If you guys have questions, please highlight my name because it'll show up and it'll be very easy for me to see. There was one I wanted to, Silver Thoughts wanted to ask, Mr. Wise, do you know anything about the alleged disabled people euthanasia program?
Propaganda.
Okay.
Propaganda, yeah. Hitler actually signed the document himself, stating that if any family member felt that their relative or close one was not living a life of what, say for instance, you put a dog down if it were suffering, if they felt it were incurable, there was a series of court cases which even then it wasn't definite. But Hitler signed that document himself, and that was just propaganda. And after the war, the Americans were doing it and the British were doing it, but they didn't use a particular word because it didn't donate that much of the Nazis.
All right, so basically it was, you only under like extreme, that you can, but there was no like official program where they're rounding people up.
Yeah,
and
it wasn't like always a cripple over there who was shooting. No, it's ridiculous.
Okay, all right. Jesus warned us about them. What about gypsies and gays? Well, what is your question exactly? Jesus warned us about them. But I'll give her time to clarify.
Sure.
We'll move on though. Now the transfer agreement basically, did you that Jews were supposed to deposit their money before they immigrate to Palestine. It wasn't Israel yet, and because people will say, "Oh, Hitler created Israel," and I'm like, no.
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 Again, if you go back to this is one of the most ignored speeches ever. This Holy War Declaration, because Samuel Ultimar was a good friend of the one of the big Jews in America. I can't remember his name now, but he was well in, and in that speech he mentions about the torture of the Jews and they're not being fed right and the no clause and they're being kicked out with nothing. And that was the general opinion for a long time. Until during the 80s, Edwin Black, a Jew, whose parents, when he brought the book out, disowned him, he brought the book out about the transfer agreement, which revealed for the first time that the Jews weren't leaving with just the shirts on the back, and the Germans were actually transferring money down to Palestine for them.
Right.
And even if they can't get the goods down there, they sell them, and then a special bank was set up. The thing was, you needed an excuse now because this is brand new news to everybody. So after saying for years that the Jews were being ill-treated, now they're saying, oh, well, he's in with Zionism. He was Zionist.
Now he's a Zionist plant.
That's the way they can get out of it.
Right.
But what it was he wanted rid of the Jews. The only peaceful way that he could get rid of them.
Right.
Nobody else wanted them. Nobody wanted them. Only those in Palestine. So this was an easy way.
Right. And in fact, so basically they were to deposit their money. They traveled down to Palestine, and then they get their money back through profit by buying German goods and stuff like that. So they were able to keep all of their money. It's the greatest story. Yeah, the greatest story. I've actually got a Jew speaking who says, if you remember now, I've seen German Jews going to Palestine every day. So it can't be denied. It's right.
He let go, but he wanted to bring them.
Right. Yep. And I wanted to make sure people were aware of this as well.
Well, that's another one. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just so frustrating. There's a question. Silver Thoughts, Mr. Wise. Was there systematic killing of the Ustashi-run camps, and did the Germans control these camps? My research showed photos of starving children, so I have questions.
Ustashi, put it this way, there was conversions down there, much like the Protestants in England when they took over from Catholicism. You had to either be a Protestant or you would be executed. And much the same thing was happening down there, because as I mentioned earlier there was Hitler was trying to recreate the Holy Roman Empire, which is the Pope being the leading Christian authority. If all Europe would have gone into the won the war, the Pope would have been the leading figure in Catholic. People would be Catholic, and Hitler was the military side of it. So down in the Balkans, the Ustashi were ardent Roman Catholics, and so they insisted on the Orthodox Serbs to convert, and if they didn't convert, then yes, they would kill them.
Okay. If Silver Thoughts, if that answers your question, then if it does not, then ask me, ask another more detailed question.
Yeah.
And then the fact that Hitler had 150,000 Jewish soldiers fighting for him.
That was news as well.
20 of them received the Knight's Cross, which was the highest military honor. And
that was a shock to a lot of people.
Right, and his chauffeur, bodyguard, and an early member of the NSDAP was Emile Maurice, and personal friend as well.
That's right. Yeah.
Silver Thoughts says thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. Let's see. Part 5. We already went through that. Um, Now the Danzig massacres. That was happening during mainly the when everything kind of broke out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
towards the end of the war.
Now D-Day. I know I've heard people say that D-Day was because it was June 6th on the 6th at the 6th hour of the day. 666. That it was.
Yeah, well, that doesn't surprise me because they are into the occult. The Allies were into the occult.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, and that it was actually done because they wanted to force Germany to fight, have a two-front fight. And
Yeah. Second, if I could just explain that one to you, by the way, they actually did an exercise in Britain on the south coast to actually prepare for that Normandy invading. Now, I've always doubted the figures of Normandy because you have a load of machine guns waiting for you. They knew they were coming in. It wasn't an easy thing to do to land. But in this exercise in Britain a couple of weeks before, Eisenhower insisted on live ammunition to make it more real. So all the ships were set to land on this beach in England, and all of a sudden, 2 U-boats passed by.
Oh, really?
See what's going on and start to pick off all these troops on these ships.
Wow.
And the troops won't manage to get to the shore. Somebody hasn't told people not to fire the live shots because then the troops being killed on the shore as well. This is all on the internet somewhere. I forgot the name of it, to be honest, but I can send it to you later, July. And there was a number of soldiers were killed. And so when they give the figures of the real landing, I certainly doubt it more than ever. There's quite a lot died in this practice because this U-boat just had these 2 U-boats,
Right.
so like shooting ducks.
Right. And a lot of people don't understand also, or don't even realize that why Japan. I'm not going to skip around a little bit. Japan was also being tortured really by the United States or the Rothschilds, United States, because they controlled China, and what was it, like 80? Japan was dependent on 80% of their oil being imported, and the Chinese kept fighting with them, and the Chinese were being told, well, we keep messing with them, we'll back you by, the Rothschild and, United States. And then, was it FDR that put the sanctions?
Screws them, yeah. And I think it was Harold Ikes, his assistant. I have it in comments by the back door, the actual memo, which he sends to Roosevelt, says, now, there's never been a better time now to have a go at the Japanese, because if we do get in a war with them, people will ignore the fact that we're actually supporting the communists in Russia. They'll just look at Japanese as who started the war.
Right. Yep. And a lot of people don't know that either.
That's right.
And it's just such a shame. And as an American, I'm so ashamed, really.
Well, it's a lot to take in. I mean, American people would have been hoodwinked, just like the British people were hoodwinked. I mean, the British have been under the Jews since Cromwell, so it's been a couple of 100 years, and there's still no idea. Now, over in America, I think the day came when they took over the Fed.
Right.
That's when your problem started.
Right.
And once you control the money of any nation, because I don't even believe that Britain lost the empire. All they did was replace, instead of running it by troops, they just put central banks in.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, and it's so important. People are like, well, why do I have to study the history? I said, because when you realize all the things that happened back then, and then you start seeing the same pattern, same things happening over and over and over and over again through, for 70, 80, 100 years, then that tells you it's proof beyond a doubt that what the true story is.
That's why the Jews are famous for wiping out history. They've already started to destroy some Viking stuff in Sweden.
They started what? I couldn't hear. They started what with the Vikings?
Yeah, destroying artifacts of the Vikings up in Sweden, so that eventually they'll try and lose that history
Right.
Because they want to just make it one world government, one mixed race,
Right.
and so people won't even know where they come from.
Right.
That's why they hate nationalism.
Right. Yes, and and it, gosh, and I think that's all everything that we're seeing now. All this, the transgenderism, the multiculturalism, all of this is Bolshevik, communist paradigms, and it's to take away your core identity, and then you'll be more easily controlled. Basically, it's kind of in a nutshell how I see it anyway.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah.
And
and it's also for those people who are wondering why Germany never signed the peace treaty. Well, why the peace treaty was never signed, because the war never stopped. Because not only did they want to wipe the Germans out, which they're still doing today, they want to wipe, as we know now, all the races, all countries, white race in all the countries, nationalism and then Christianity is to be wiped off the map completely.
Right, it's the biggest threat to the Jewish Bolshevik international Jewish type of worldview.
It's rising. Yeah.
Yeah. There was, I know how many peace treaties in all did Hitler make?
Well, he offered a minimum of 22.
Minimum 22.
22, all turned down. No answer to them, and the Allies nil.
Right, and they refused all of them. And the was a Polish government openly admitted in a radio broadcast that there was 2 days.
Yeah, they were killing the Germans by gouging their eyes out.
Did what?
They admitted over the radio that any German pilot would be killed and eyes gouged out.
Yep.
It's brutal.
Yep. Very. I mean, the degree of savagery, and there's just, you have to be a pure psychopath not to have any conscience whatsoever.
Well, that's why they never signed a Geneva Convention, the Soviets, because they didn't believe in it. If you got caught with the Soviets, I show a clip of some German soldiers who've been, stripped to the clothes like the genitals cut off.
Yeah.
So Hitler never had any second thoughts about dealing with them the same way.
Right.
The problem came for Germany where at the end of the war, when they were prisoner of war status, they did exactly what Bush did to the Afghans, where they called them unarmed enemy combats and lost all their rights.
Right.
So then they do whatever they wanted with him.
Right. Yep. And starved. How many million? Like over 1 million German people.
Well, they claim, 1,500 died in our camps. I think there was some in France as well. So it's a fair whack, and yet some people still deny it. But then why would you change them from POW to
enemy combatants? Right. That's right. Excellent point. Proof.
Yeah. Truth will always come out. Just I won't.
That's right. That's right. What was the armistice about? I have
sorry.
Armistice.
Yeah, that was with Franz.
I couldn't hear. I'm sorry. With what?
When he conquered France, he offered France an armistice.
Oh yeah, right.
Which is
right.
Yeah, which is if France accepted the rule of Germany, then everything would be fine.
Right.
And everybody did get on. Everything went smoothly. In fact, some French were a bit annoyed at the Americans landing because they thought life would anyway.
Right.
But what Roosevelt did, I'm sorry, Truman by that time, I think Roosevelt as well, before he died.
Right.
He insisted on total surrender.
Right. Yes. Right.
That means a nightmare then.
Right. Yep. There was, I know that FDR froze not only Japanese assets, but he froze German assets as well, which contributed to the tensions of the war and oil embargoes.
Well, a neutral country, weren't it? They were neutral America, and yet he invaded Greenland.
Right. This was beforehand. Yes, absolutely. This is all beforehand. And then the $1 billion land lease to the UK that was passed through Congress was just repaid in 2006.
Yeah.
Well, and think about that. You know, that's why this.
Well,
That's why they
well,
do
think
it. I
about
mean,
this.
they've been making so much money. Yes.
Well, think about this. It was keeping the communists who just killed 60 million Christians in the war, in Britain and America. They sent tanks as well, and he also sent money to China.
Yeah.
And at the end of the war, they sided with Mao Zedong. So it is a surprise that the communists by the back door.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And
Because over Berlin there was that flag, the communist flag, which everybody thought was just theatre. Actually, it was the biggest statement of all. Communism is now ruling.
yeah.
Because Freemasonry and communism go hand in hand. Some Freemasons don't deny it, but
Right.
the fact is it goes hand in hand. And so it's the Freemasons from the West, Churchill and Roosevelt, and it's the communists from the East,
Right.
who the bankers invented, because they're Freemasons as well.
Right. Right. So Freemasonry basically is a communist tool. That's how I kind of look at
Well,
it.
yeah, I mean, it's Jewish, which is communism, yeah.
Yeah, they're
So at
communists.
the end of the day, that's why he shut all the lodges down, because he felt that they were the ones what were infiltrating without anybody knowing.
Right.
Secret society.
Yep. Operation Barbarossa happened because of I had mentioned earlier in the during our chat that they were
Yeah.
building up how many millions of troops at the German border, or on the
They're making 30 million.
30 million. Yep. The Icebreaker book by Russian historian Viktor Suvorov.
Also, Leonid Brezhnev
Right.
admitted it in the 1970s.
hmm
So it's all been recorded, but we're just not told.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, and a lot of the Ukrainians saw the German troops as liberators from the oppressive,
Yeah,
murderous.
because that's a Christian country as well. They suffered from Stalin.
Yep.
And if you notice, was the Germans were coming in,
Mhm.
they were giving them the sign of the cross.
Mhm. Yep. There's only 6,000 Germans, or people, whoever the Soviet Union took as POWs. They took 90,000 POWs. 90,000. Only 6,000 returned home. That's how brutal their camps were.
Well,
Those were
there
truly
was
death
not.
camps.
There was 6 million Axis in German soldiers. I think there was 3 million of 6 million German, and 25,000 came home from 3 million.
hmm I mean, it's just the numbers. I mean, where did they do with all these bodies? I mean, I could just imagine if you could do, like imagery underground, that there must be skeletons all over the
They're full of
place.
it. Yeah.
I mean, it's just
Well, they're still finding these mass graves in the Balkans because when, like I said, everyone was sent back. Some of them even killed themselves on the train because they knew what was going to happen.
right.
As soon as you got off the train, the women's raped, kids are beaten up, and soldiers are beaten or shot, and then they go on a death match across the Balkans.
Right.
And all along, even today, they're discovering pits with loads of skeletons.
Wow. And then, and I think we mentioned earlier that Hitler has been exonerated of the cat. How do you say it? The Catan.
You can see, well,
Yeah.
he was and he wasn't. I mean, they just said, oh, by the way, Germany, you do it already. They
Right.
didn't actually make a splash of it.
Right.
Well, Roosevelt and Churchill knew this anyway. They knew it all along.
Yeah.
It was even mentioned in Nuremberg. They got charged with Nuremberg, can you believe?
Yeah. The Nuremberg trials was it's just a joke,
Yeah.
an absolute joke. Is there? I'm just going to ask the chat and the audience if you guys have some questions. Please get them ready to ask because we're kind of winding down in our interview here. So just to kind of give everybody a heads up. Now, Operation Keyhole. Now, that was that was the forced repatriation that you had mentioned earlier. That where
Yeah,
you
that
you had
still
lost.
hasn't been.
Yeah,
Them books haven't opened yet because there's 25,000 Americans left in Russia.
yeah,
And now we look at it now, when you see what the bankers were doing anyway, if they wanted to wipe out the white race today, as you know, because they're mixing it in Europe, them 25,000 American soldiers were never going to come home because they weren't bothered about them.
right. And the Kalergi plan is in effect and has been in effect. Um,
Yes.
you know, even though it may not.
Can I just mention this about the occult as well? I mean, again, it's done me, this latest documentary. I have to go into the occult to find out certain things. And one of them was the Armada. The Spanish Armada goes as far back now to the Spanish Armada, where it was destroyed by a storm in the reign of Elizabeth I, who had John Dee as the court magician.
Yeah.
So
wow, that far back.
I'm investigating it.
Wow.
Sorry?
I said that far back.
No.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I'm investigating it. And the guy who's doing this lecture, he says what they did. John Dee made contact with a guy called Kelly to some upper beings. He says you've got microbes which you can see through a microscope as lower beings, which if you said 200 years ago, nobody would have believed you. Because you've got a microscope and you can see them. Well, he says it's higher beings and called them microbes. And they supplied a lot of information passed down to Britain because all of a sudden everything started to happen. The empire rose, the stock market came about, inventions, you could build bridges, you could build big, massive buildings. All this information was coming down and being received by the occult families of Europe.
Okay.
And he says that they don't do nothing for nothing. So when John Dee said to him, well, what do you want? They said, we want blood.
We want what?
So,
blood?
Blood, yeah. Because so like you said, after every war these days, there's always a massive blood killing.
Right.
As though it's a sacrifice. Okay.
Right.
So I'm thinking to myself, well, the thing to do now is to see if there's any significant kind of sacrifice at the time. So I investigate the Armada and I find out there weren't just one Armada, there was 3 Armadas. We were never taught this at school. Wow. The Spanish actually landed on the 3rd one, but all the ships in the 2nd and the 3rd were all wrecked, so the Spanish, what did land, had to leave. So there was 3 storms, and I can understand why they didn't teach us, because you can explain 1, 2 would push, but 3 is another ball game.
Right.
So I tried to find out, researched if there was any significant blood lost at that time or lives lost, and I found out that after the war, the Spanish Armada, because this is over like 5 or 6 years of 3 Armadas, they all got sunk. The first Armada, Britain didn't really get in a battle with them. The storm destroyed them all. So they probably only lost a handful of men, didn't even lose a ship. Yet, after the war, the Crown turned around and said, no ship is allowed back to dock in case the Spanish come back again. That was the excuse.
Okay.
And the ships were left at sea, and 8,000 sailors died.
Wow.
Of disease and starvation.
Right. Wow.
Now, yeah. So,
I mean, I'm not laughing because it's funny. I'm just laughing because it's this belief that they've,
unbelievable.
Yeah. Wow.
And like I said, with the Allies, Roosevelt wanted to get in the war all along, as you know, and he built the Pentagon as soon as Russia were looking like it would fall. They had millions captured in the first week, and the Germans were taking 50 miles a day. They were plowing in there.
Yeah.
He ordered the Pentagon to be built. Well, the Pentagon is probably the most significant magic sign you can get in the magic circles.
Right.
And it should have took 4 years to build, but it was actually built in around about 18 months. And what I say in the documentaries can't be proven. But at one point, you get to the gates of Moscow, and suddenly the Russians started to push the Germans back. This is the same army. There's only 2 years ago still with Finland, and yet they're pushing now one of the world's finest armies back. And like I said, can't be proven. Worst winter ever, again, weather.
Right. Right.
But the Germans did put the artifacts on display and called the Masons satanic.
Sure. Yeah.
So they believed it. They would have believed it was satanic.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't prove that point, but there's a reason for building a Pentagon.
Right. Well, I don't doubt that, and the FDR I know was supplying because the Germans would have won, but because FDR, bailed the Soviets out basically by sending them millions of dollars worth of equipment and this and that.
Yeah.
That was the only reason why the and what was the ratio with German to Russian? I mean, it wasn't like it was such an astounding difference. Like there was a small amount of Germans against all these Russians, but the damage
Well, that was the problem.
the damage the Germans were able to cause. I mean, because they were such superior fighters, they
the thing was, they couldn't sustain the losses. The Russians, they made to spare. They lost 20 million. Still had 6 million going to Berlin at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But the Germans, when they lost a lot, they suffered more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But like when they were fighting the Soviets, though, I think it was like 9,000 Soviets died and only like 2,000 Germans, or something like that, because of the superior fighting skill, of the Panzer units. And
yes, that's where fanatical.
Yes, they were.
They were. They could turn a battle from certain defeat. You brought the SS in, and they were legendary for it, for turning battles around.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. If there's any questions, you guys go ahead and you can make sure you highlight my name so I can see it, and then I will ask them for you. As far as I wanted to get your opinion on the status of today, Dennis.
Yeah.
How do you see things today? I mean, what's your now?
I've asked this many times. I've asked this question many times.
Yeah.
The obvious answer is, the answer to all this would have been to win World War II. Then we would have had, no transgenderism and no mixed race in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't win that one, and it took a long time for people to realise, and not everybody still realises, the situation and the threat that was being carried out. Even now, people, when they see all these migrants coming into Europe, feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
But there is an agenda, and the white race, and I mean, America now, I think, is now in a minority. London is in a minority now, whites. So it's happening. The thing is, people can't get their head around that Churchill was what he wanted this. When he was buried, people turned out because he was a hero, whatever. He was the same people that he wanted to wipe off the planet. But people find that hard to accept, I think. And so we're in a situation now where the reason 1,600 girls got raped in Rotherham and others in other towns, we have no army. The government is, just like the American government, is a government which is at one point infiltrated and took over, in both countries. So if there was, say for instance, civil war to break out, then the army and the police would side with the migrants.
Right.
It's quite obvious. So what they've been doing, the evilest of it all, is they've been bombing, taking white troops over to the Middle East. This is the continuation of World War II. It's a world revolution which has been going on with the Jews taking this with the French Revolution. They took white troops over to Middle East and bombed the hell out of the Middle East.
Right.
And then they've let Muslims come and live amongst us.
Yeah.
So when they get into the majority, that's the time there could be a problem, because even though there's some decent Muslims, when Bush comes to shove, they're going to stand out of their own. And if what happens, I always look at the Soviet Union as the blueprint. Again, in this document, what I'm doing, I don't know if you remember one of the somebody was making a film and his wife, kid, ended up shot. They said it was a murder-suicide, but there's also people thinking that it was taken out because that film wasn't meant to be shown. And he named Freemasons, and that's the only person I know that's agreed with me, because obviously this documentary is about that, and it shows the Freeman Council and everything like that. And Hollywood's never made a film about that, and it's the same in the Soviet Union. they came with this anti-Semitic law that if anybody was anti-Semitic, which Trump's playing around with now, they had the death penalty.
Mm-hmm.
Stalin brought that out, the death penalty, so you couldn't criticise the Jews. Same happening now in America.
Right.
Yeah, and same Britain.
Right.
These laws are going to be coming. The no-hide laws are already in.
Right.
Bush put them in. So it's not good, And if they open the prisons like they did in the Soviet Union, all of a sudden you've got Muslims piling out who have had sex for a long time or have been watching TV and whites bombing the hell out of countries. Mm-hmm. So you're going to have gangs of Muslims roaming around.
Right.
It's not good. I'm only saying unless there's divine intervention, which has happened before, believe it or not, when Genghis Khan was going to run rampant over Europe, he turned back for some reason.
Okay.
I call that divine intervention. Unless there's divine intervention, it's a problem.
Right. Yeah, unfortunately,
because we're army. We've no army. Yeah.
It's and a lot of these so-called migrants are men in their young 20s, and I think that our governments are told, obviously, not, on the DL, they're told to torture their citizens, all of us. And part of the torture, for the people over in Europe right now anyway, is that these migrants are coming. I think a lot of them are probably mercenaries and, are going around and doing these things. I think it's all by plan,
well, I think there's some meetings during the 80s and 90s where Israel and Arab countries all got together, the Europeans, and they actually laid out the platform and said that they came over, we'll have benefits, laws will be changed for you. All this went on in the 80s and early 90s.
Right.
So there are some Muslims who know, I'm not saying every Muslim knows, but this is certainly planned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that, like you were saying, that the governments will not,
side with the population.
They won't side with the native population. They're going to side with the migrants. And I think that's obviously, it's on purpose, We have a couple questions for you.
Sure.
Tongue Speaker wants to know, what should Americans be doing now to avoid the Bolshevik Revolution in America?
Well, the thing is, the Bolsheviks in your government, Bush explaining communism by the back door is a follower of Trotsky. Trotsky is obviously a Bolshevik. Neocons are all Bolsheviks.
Right.
That's why they want to take down the government in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. So they're already in there. If you get rid of the banks, there's still going to be trouble. Because Britain's going to come knocking on your door, and France and all the others. So I just think there's going to be a civil war, but I think they want a civil war because, like I said, they know that's another way of killing a lot more whites.
Right. Yeah. I think, Silver Thoughts wants to know, Mr. Wise, do you believe in Trump and Q?
No. Absolutely not, 100%.
Yeah, unfortunately.
He's Israel first.
Yep, unfortunately. Let's see.
Putin as well.
Pardon me?
I think Putin as well.
Putin, yeah, unfortunately. Yeah, I think it's all... And in fact, I've been doing some research with the USMCA that Trump just signed, and we're going to have an invasion of our own at the southern border from Middle and South America. Yeah, and we're going to have the same problem as Europe pretty soon.
Well, even if you stop your illegal immigrants, the amount you're bringing over legally is enough, to cause Republicans never to win again.
Yeah, we're supposed to be having they're going to test it, and 5 million are expected to come in. And then after that, it's going to be the 15 to 20 million. And what that's going to do, it's going to collapse everything. It's going to lower wages and all this stuff and turn us into a slave nation. I don't know if you're familiar with a guy named Wardell Rance or Eddie. No. But anyway, I've learned a lot from him and this other guy, Grindel61, his YouTube channel. about all that, and
Yeah.
it's instituting the UN laws, and then, like you said, the Noahide laws, and so I think
Yeah,
we're
although the UN's communist.
yeah, yeah, and I think unfortunately we're entering the final stage of this New World Order thing. Um,
The only thing is that Russia is a Christian nation, and I don't believe Christians are going to be allowed into the New World Order.
right,
So unless they do a mass conversion in Russia, there'll be a war there.
right. In Russia, you mean?
Yeah,
Oh.
I mean, there has to be because they don't want any Christians in the world.
Yeah,
On it.
right. There was another question. Let's see. Jesus warned us about them, wants to know, did anybody give you problems, or did you receive any threats and censorship over your documentary, The Greatest Story Never Told?
Yeah, I mean, it was censored, like I said, after 1917 Paris. And then it was one particular Monday, I woke up one Monday morning and every single one was taken off because other people just uploaded them on YouTube. It was completely wiped off YouTube completely. But they've let it back on again since, because like I said, the ADL did back off with it because they didn't want to bring too much attention. Because
Right.
the problem is, if you go on IMDb where you get all the reviews,
Right.
obviously you get people on there like who've seen it and they cried and they know the truth,
Right.
and there's others saying don't watch it. That's all they can say because
Right.
if somebody watches it,
Right.
problem.
So what happened exactly? Can you tell me from the beginning? How did the ADL? I mean, what did they do at first?
Well, they obviously tried to deny it was factual, but as you've watched it yourself, it's self-explaining as it goes along.
Right.
And so what they decided to do, they made an announcement. Is it Southern Poverty
Yes.
as well? There's a Jewish organ, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, them as well, they were involved in it. And they came out in 2013 and said they were no longer going to challenge the documentary because
Really?
they felt that,
Wow.
yeah, because they felt that enough people were still brainwashed not to bother watching it, which is probably true. And so they left it alone, but only last week, like I said, it was mentioned, it was said that the shooter in New Zealand watched it the same day, which I highly doubt, but
Right.
I mean, he could have watched it. Well, there's nothing about killing Muslims in there anyway, and Muslims
Right.
fought with Hitler. And the other one was that the UN had reported that one last week. So it's being mentioned again there.
I think they're really getting sloppy with all of their propaganda and their false flags over the past couple of years. What do you think? I mean,
Well, yeah, I think that's because there's no military challenge. I think if they had a military threat, then they'd be a lot more careful. They've got a bit arrogant now, and they're in a position where I suppose they can be. I don't know.
I don't think they even care. They're like, yeah, we're going to do this. It'll be easily debunked, but we don't care. And I'm like,
when I first started doing it by the background, I mentioned the New World Order. Everyone used to say, conspiracy theory.
mm-hmm,
But they talk about it now.
mm-hmm. Yeah. A Peaceful Pilgrim says, at Harsh Reality, thank you for this amazing interview and your efforts to give us this most important truth. Mr. Wise, in your opinion, how much time do we have left?
I think it's close. I do think it's close. The way they've been ramping up for the past couple of years now, immigrants going into Europe, by the millions,
Mm-hmm.
and even at night time, you don't even know how many going in at night.
Right.
I don't think it's going to be too long. I hope I'm wrong. In fact, I hope I'm wrong about everything. But because it's not, it's more the children who's going to suffer. When they're teaching kids at 10 anal sex and transgenderism, and kids that can decide what sex they are on a Monday and a Tuesday, fluidity of
Right.
transgenderism, it's satanic. And obviously
Right.
their God is Lucifer, and the Catholic Church was infiltrated. And the Pope, obviously, preaches in the world order. He's the Church of Lucifer.
Yeah. It's in
Well, the reason
it's in the works.
They don't say that. I was just saying the reason. I mean, I know people out there. There's a lot of people now have given up on Christianity because of the brainwashing. Anyway, since 1945, I can go to Europe now and talk to some young lads. Ask do you believe in aliens and God? They say aliens. And
Right.
fair enough.
Yeah.
But the point is that Europe, for 1,000 years, Christianity and Vatican fought off all attempts of Europe being taken over. In 1945, they were infiltrated. 46 actually. They were totally infiltrated, and the Vatican too, in 63, 65, was wiped off the map.
Right.
And a million Catholics do not know that.
Right.
and they don't want to know.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, I was actually arguing about, this new, how these religions and the churches are bending way too much, and I challenged some people because they were liberals, and I said, really, the gay lobby has no business or any right to enforce any church to change its doctrine,
Sure.
and I said, and really, if you think about it, it's against the law what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're threatening these religious organizations and harassing them, and it's your in your amendments, your Bill of Rights, that you can practice your freedom, have freedom of religion without being harassed or coerced or anything like that. So everything that we're seeing, with these lobbies that they're doing, it's completely illegal. They're doing a hell of a lot. There's a lot more laws that are, not constitutional, but.
Can I just confess that?
Well,
I think Roosevelt, like every country today, they're all corporations.
Right.
And I think America went to America Inc. Back then.
Yeah.
Which I think they can bypass all the laws now because they'll just say it's a corporation. So even your gun laws, they will look as being illegal.
Yeah.
It's, they plan it to that detail. In fact, it's that well planned, that thick of a web, that it's got to be satanic to actually, normal people don't think like that.
Right. They don't. No.
Right. Oh, no.
Yeah, that's
no way.
And it's just amazing how far they've gotten in such a short amount of time.
Well, traitors don't help. I mean, it's all right, we can criticise the Jews, and they are a race, which I think will go on to destroy other cultures, even destroy ours.
Absolutely.
But the traitors were, these are the ones which they sold the soul.
We have a question. Johnny Earl wants to know,
Sure.
Mr. Wise, in your opinion, what would America look like today if Germany had won?
Well, it's hard to say because, if there was no war ever, well, you think saying if they won, well, if they won, I think, it would have been, nationalistic. There would have been any race mixing. It probably would send the blacks back to Africa, to be quite honest. I'm sure if we came back today, we would send them all back from Europe. I think it would have been a better place to live, put it that way. I mean, I believe Detroit now is, there's white flight now in America from what I can gather. The whites who live in Detroit, they're starting to leave Chicago. And like E. Michael Jones once said, when they first came over, the Polish and the Italian and the other types of white groups, they felt they were Italian and felt they were Poles. But as soon as they were moved out of the cities to the boroughs, then they became white. They were isolated, and everyone all of a sudden now loses that nationality. And
lost their culture.
Really?
Right.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and Catholics and no different.
Right. We have another question. Let's see. Wilfred III wants to know, Dennis, did you ever meet David Irving, and if so, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, first of all, let me say, Mr. Irving has suffered. He was jailed for Holocaust denial. He was even jailed once in Russia for a year. We never even mentioned the Holocaust when he was jailed because the guy who organised it, he said to the guy who organised it, he brought him over and he could have said something, but he didn't, and he still got jailed. So you've got to give him a lot of slack there. I think he's also had a lot of problems with trial. To be honest, it's a Zionist country, and I don't think he was ever going to win that trial, but, he felt he would.
Right.
But they said all that. Somebody said to me the other week, I'm seeing David Irving next week, is there any questions you would like to ask him? And I said, why has he never looked into Freemasonry? It's not just him, there's other people, historians, who never mentioned the Freemason side of it. Like you said, he closed every single lodge in Europe, and it's not something you can just bypass. So we asked him that particular question, and David Irving's answer was, I just looked over. Didn't really bother with it. I seemed surprised when he was asked the question, and uncomfortable. So I don't know. It's obviously he's done some great work, but avoided some work.
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And he didn't answer your question, huh?
Well, he just said, like he said, he didn't think it was worth looking into.
Oh, okay.
Type of,
How long ago was that?
but this is only a couple of months ago.
A couple days ago?
A couple of months.
Oh, wow. I couldn't. Where did you? I couldn't hear. Where did you see him at? And
Sorry, yeah, no, I was on YouTube and somebody messaged me and said, I'm going to see David Irving next week.
oh,
Have you got any questions for him? And I said, ask him why he's never investigated
Gotcha.
Freemason.
gotcha.
And the guy said, well, funny enough, I'm going to ask him that. And he did ask him. And he come back and told me,
Oh, I see.
he
I see.
just,
Okay. Thank you. All right. I see.
yeah,
Let's see. Oops.
I mean, it's not just World War II where it all comes in. NASA, all these other, they're all Freemasons and they're lying through the back teeth
Oh yeah.
about certain things.
Oh yeah.
So we are surrounded with him.
Yeah. Yeah. They a peaceful pilgrim wants to know, Mr. Wise, how many do we have to wake up to stand a chance? There are a small minority, even with the Shabos sellouts help.
Yeah. Well, the more, all I can say is the more we wake up, the better chance we have.
Right.
But there's a lot of people, they've just got their headphones on and their phones and, playing the games and they're just not at the races.
Right.
So, even, I've tried as much as I could myself, but, I still think there's a lot to do.
Right. Well, I have a feeling also when we start seeing the immigration getting out of control and we start seeing more societal
Yeah.
destability or instability, however, when they
will
destabilize
happen,
it more,
happen.
then I think
Yeah.
that a lot of people are going to start waking up at a faster pace, and I think then we're going to start seeing more results as far as action. So I don't plan on stopping. I plan on continuing until the end. So,
Well, the thing is it will bring. I mean, I love Michael Jones. I don't agree with everything he says, but I do love 95% of his work. And he's saying that the Jews can't stop us from saying this, stopping. But they did in the Soviet Union.
Who was that?
If they bring out
Who were you quoting?
Michael Jones.
Michael Jones. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. In the Soviet Union, when they bring these laws out, and it's a death sentence if you're anti-Semitic, if they bring that particular law to America, then, because he's saying the Jews can't do this. But if they bring these laws out, what they did in the Soviet Union, then it's a real problem because you can't talk about it or you will be executed.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, they're trying to do that now with economic
Yes,
warfare,
I know.
with the HR 336, or otherwise known as the S.1 bill, which a group of us here on YouTube have been trying, doing activism and trying to bring awareness to this, and contact. And in fact, I finally did get a response back from my representative. I have to call him and talk to him. But yeah, I've been encouraging people. We have to get back involved with our community and go to township meetings and show our faces to these senators and representatives, because right now people are so busy and overwhelmed, they could do whatever they want because nobody shows up. But if people are
Exactly.
showing up
Yeah.
and going to these meetings and holding them accountable, it's a completely different ballgame.
Well,
It's a little
the thing
hard.
is-
Make it a little harder at least.
Yeah, well, the unfortunate thing is, right, is that voting changes nothing. Marching changes nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The only things what change is wars. That's
Right.
the only time things really get changed.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not calling for war because
Right.
there's hope it's all peaceful resolved. But
Mm-hmm.
the problem is you can march all day. I mean, a million marched in London for the Iraq war. The war still went ahead.
Mm-hmm.
They just ride roughshod.
Right.
So then, at the end of the day, I think it's going to come down to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's whether or not is it then too late.
Right. Yeah, but I do think that I've seen public opinion work in the past. If there's a huge outcry, they'll back off. For example, Mayo Clinic had revised
Yeah.
their definition of pedophilia, and there was such a backlash about it.
Well, that's the big one. Yeah. That's
They changed it.
that's what they'd love to get in, but that's going to be a problem. That one.
Oh yeah, it will be, and it is. But but the Mayo Clinic, because they've had.
Marrying men were back off. That's even worse. That one.
I'm sorry.
Men marrying men was a milestone in my eyes.
Yeah,
You know,
but
you-
they.
Yeah.
Right, but Mayo Clinic was trying to say that pedophilia is sexual orientation, and everybody got so pissed off they
Yeah.
they changed it back. So I mean,
Yeah.
there's many.
Sounds like that.
We still can make a difference. Hopefully, before it gets to that point where we have to pick up arms and whatnot. So hey, I say what, it doesn't hurt to try. So.
Well, the thing is, do you go down fighting, or do you just bend over? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's the choice.
Thank you. I'm not bending. I'm not bending over for anybody. They're gonna have to take it.
Well,
So
the first thing to do is obviously if it is an arms race,
yeah.
is check the media, because without
Yes.
the media, nobody knows what's going on.
At least that's on our side, is that everybody knows that they're compromised. So
Yeah.
we're trying our best to get like big YouTuber channels involved. But anyway, so moving on.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have Peaceful Pilgrim Dennis. How can the majority of brainwashed people be convinced that history is false? What experiences can you share that helped, like maybe a brainwashed person and you helped to convince them, like any techniques or?
Well, I think what's happened, although I'm not a big fan of it, is Tommy Robinson. I think a lot of people have been shocked at the way he's been treated. He doesn't exactly spell out who's really to blame, but he has to go at the Muslims all the time, and to a certain extent you're right. And so people just can't believe that the laws are being bent
Right.
for these Muslims rather than the general English people.
Right.
So that's the culture shock to a lot of people. It wasn't a surprise to me, but I think the worst person America's had, by the way, is Obama. He were a nightmare, I think, for his 8 years.
So basically, just bring up kind of like recent examples of people, where
Yeah, well-
people were being, mistreated or whatever, that kind
Yeah,
of.
well, it's like London. Right? I mean, London now is like more or less Baghdad. There's nothing. What can you say? It's obviously an agenda. You've even got a Muslim mayor. So
Right.
the country is being handed over to Islam,
Right.
whether sooner or later,
Right.
and people will realise at some stage. But
Well, we have one in
Sure, it's on-
Minnesota. We have Omar Ilhan or whatever her name is in Minnesota.
don't so bad.
And that, yeah. Spiritual Vapor wants to know if we sign a treaty with all other European countries and Saudi Arabia, so if they keep killing us, it would be an act of... I don't know if that's a question. Never mind.
But you can't sign any treaties with the European countries because they're all under Rothschilds.
Right.
It's just one. EU is a Rothschild invention.
Right. And I think, Dennis, because people are talking about Robinson being a Zionist, I think, Dennis, you were just using him as an example. That you
As an example,
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of his.
Yeah, he's a Zionist. Yeah, he knows he's a
Yeah.
Zionist. He was just saying that as an
Yeah.
example, you could use that. But,
Yeah, I mean, he got thrown in prison just for
right,
trying to reveal these girls getting raped.
right.
People were shocked at that one.
Right.
But what happened with the rapes was when the fathers went round, to sort it out. A couple of fathers got wise to what the girls were doing. When the police came, they arrested the fathers.
Yeah, that's terrible. That's crazy. And that's what I'm talking about, the government torturing their citizens.
Yeah.
It's all done on purpose. They don't...
They don't care.
They don't.
Because that's been the agenda since World War II. They just use the countries what won World War II, like Australia, Britain, France, America. Put master to them. They're going to race next then.
Yeah. That's right. Okay, I think that's it for the questions. But, we're coming up on 2 hours, so I'm going to go ahead and end the show. It went by really quick. I had a great
Well,
time.
I've hoped I'm enlightening some people, and I don't want to put any downers on anybody. Just sometimes you got to be real.
Right. Well, we're in a very precarious and bad time. So there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. And, the thing I think we all want to walk away with is don't give up fighting. Yeah, it is bad. But
Well,
certainly don't give up. Yeah.
can I just say, in 1939, Hitler was in a position, it was declared war on. Germany had been put through the mincer, but he managed to turn things around within 2 years. He took all Europe back.
Yeah.
So it's amazing what can be done. That's why they hate him so much. I mean, if it weren't for the outside forces who invaded after, Europe would have been nationalism and Christian. But it fails in the end. But that's why they hate him so much. Things can turn quick. Like I said, we haven't got an armies yet, but if somebody just wakes up and can, a coup or something like that, I don't know.
Right. Well, they don't want people getting any ideas if they learn the true history of Hitler. That's why
Exactly.
they keep. Oh, you can't. Look into that.
Yeah. I listened to David Icke the other day, and he was talking about the bankers. It was right what he was saying: the printed money, charity interest, and there's actually no money; it's all fake. And yet he'll abuse Hitler.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Everybody is saying. Johnny Earl, please thank Mr. Dennis Wise for all he has done. I purchased The Greatest Story Never Told back when he first published the DVDs. Everybody's saying thank you. You're wonderful. Yeah, absolutely, you're a legend, and you really are. You really are, and I'm so grateful to have had the opportunity to talk with you and meet you.
Well, we'll do it again sometime, no problem.
Absolutely, I hope so. If you want to stick around, I'd like to say goodbye privately.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
All right, everybody. Thank you guys for coming. I really had a great time with everyone. I hope you all had fun too. And we will be back. And I'm gonna, Dennis, if you'll come back, we could talk about your other documentaries. That'd be great.
Yeah, sure.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right, everybody, have a great night, and I will see you soon.